Have you ever wondered what a YouTuber who has all the retro gaming devices would recommend to a friend? This is the RG353VS. This device was sent to me by Litz NXT. They do not see this video before I post it, and there was no money exchange, so they have not influenced this review in any way. That being said, I am pretty much just going to rave about this device in this review. You know, it's going back now. This device is getting older, but it is still available on their website. We'll have a look at prices now. But somehow between this generation and the new generation of far more expensive Anbernic devices, I feel like something has been lost. You know, the reason I say that, today I picked up my RG280V and I picked up the RG351P, and I was just reminded at how excellent these devices are. And the main reason for that is their controls. The buttons are excellent. And I know some people complained about Anbernic having inferior rubber membranes or whatever the case may be. I do feel like those critiques are a little bit unfair. And so enter the RG353VS. This device is near perfect. Apart from the rattle, that ghastly rattle that these buttons give, and we'll try fix that just now. Apart from that, this is a near perfect device, and it is because of the buttons. It has really, really good buttons. I really love this indented with that lettering is indented, and so less chance of the paint coming off, and they just feel great. You've got these mushy start and select buttons. These sort of switch style joysticks are pretty good, and it really has a lovely D-pad. And so all round, I just feel like somewhere along the line, somebody's getting too fancy and actually messing with the system. That's my opinion, because I feel like this generation, you know, for instance, the RG405V, as wonderful as this device is, the D-pad is quite stiff, and I actually prefer this D-pad for retro gaming and Street Fighter gaming and that sort of thing. And if we are going to split hairs, this is still my favorite retro D-pad on one of these modern emulation devices. Even just feeling that rubber membrane now feels great, and really nice just for playing Street Fighter or maybe Game Boy Advance or NES or whatever. So hardware nearly perfect except for the rattle. And I would say one of the standout features actually, and the reason why I say I would recommend this to a friend, especially someone who just wants to play retro games, is that it's usable immediately. This has now JelOS on it, which we're going to get into it. So what I'm going to speak about today is how to make this even more perfecter. And it arrives with a perfectly decent Anbernic version of, I think it comes with the emulation station. I've already forgotten because I just like JelOS so much. I've forgotten about what it came with, but it's usable off the bat. You know, originally I was going to make a review of this and just use it as is, which is kind of my shtick lately. But I just wanted to do something a little bit different and say, how can we make this perfect device perfecter for your friends and family for Christmas? And then, you know, I usually at this point of the video say, what are the critical flaws? And the only thing is that rattle. And you see, people get upset with me sometimes in my comments and they go, you know, why are you making such a big deal of this? I'm not making as big a deal of it on this device because this device is a lot cheaper. So here's my go-to D-pad test. This game is a little bit sensitive, so we'll go to Darkwing Duck, which is less sensitive, and test this. But it does have a little bit of oversensitivity. People do tend to make too big a deal out of this in this sort of scene, because this is a device that is notoriously famous just for being great. And it's actually, the D-pad is a little bit oversensitive. It is pretty sensitive and pretty oversensitive at that. So I just feel like we do tend to overdo our analysis of these things when, you know, if we went and checked the D-pad on a 3DS, it'd probably also be oversensitive. So it's just, as a reviewer, I don't want to go too crazy with these things because I just feel like I don't want to overdo it. Anyway, last test for the D-pad. So I'm finding it a little bit difficult to do Street Fighter moves with this D-pad, and I do think it is a little bit oversensitive. So it's not the best D-pad in the world, but again, I do feel like we've become a little bit overcritical because the devices have gotten more expensive. But I think for general gameplay, that's why I say I would recommend this for a friend, a sort of non-serious gamer. And you know, that's the problem. You know, the more expensive these devices get, the more we're heading into the territory of playing games that people who are true gamers are more into, like, you know, the PlayStation players of the world who are going to be more critical of these things in the Windows gaming guys, the Steam Deck guys. And so the more expensive these become, the more critical people are going to become of these controls. So anyway, at this price point, this D-pad is acceptable. So the joystick isn't mapped for PlayStation. So we're going to port 1 controls there. So we just go to left analog. Now that should, configuration file, save current configuration, quick menu, resume. All right, there we go. Okay, so I just wanted to do a bit of a test of this joystick. And here in Spyro, it's a pretty forgiving game when it comes to joysticks. So here I'm just going around in a circle. Anyway, that's a very rudimentary test, but just from experience and using these, I do feel like this joystick isn't too sensitive. And I think it would be quite enjoyable to use. But on this device, you're not going to use the joysticks a whole lot. And the amounts of power it has, it's not a critical thing. That's why I'm not being overly critical about this, but just so you can see, yeah, it is a nice joystick. The joystick works fine. Good. Let's quickly do a brightness test. Let's bring it down to, that's off. So that's notch 1 with brightness. There we go. That's proper. This is pretty good. This isn't going to bug someone in bed while you're playing at night. Yeah, I think that's a decent low brightness. Let's go to the brightest. Okay, but that obviously looks quite bright in the dark room. Let's go back to the game we were playing. So there the whites are very bright. So now let's go into normal setting here. But that is decent. That is a really good brightness. My studio is quite bright and that is looking good. So good spectrum between bright and dark. So at this price point, I'm not expecting miracles on the screen, but we've got good color. But you can see this nice color, that's a sunset in the background. You can see all the depth of color there. That's a good screen. So obviously, if you compare this to the RG405E, which isn't pocketable at all. I mean, I didn't even do a pocketability test on my video. I've got these on skinny jeans, they're tightish. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. Whereas with this, that's very pocketable. Obviously, that's, it's sticking out of it, but it's pocketable. That you can just shove in anywhere. The only thing that is a bit of a bother is this. I really don't like this ridge. A device that I don't talk about enough, and I should actually do maybe a comparison video. MiU Mini Plus. This is a great design because for pocketability, this needs to be pocketable, and that's a great design. That's a clever design. This, while ergonomic, it feels great in the hand, just not great for pocketability. So I want to do a little ergonomics test. So what I said about the RGB20S is that it's perfectly balanced. If you put your 2 fingers on that ridge, which I don't like that ridge, but if you put your fingers there, it balances perfectly. I don't think this does that. Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, it rocks back, and so it rocks back down into your fingers. So that's good, I suppose. Let's feel, this is the RG35XX. This feels great. This is so well balanced. It's got such a good feel. It just is solid and got a really good feeling in the hand. This, like I say, rocks down into your hand, which is okay. But then what's nice about this is when you put your hands in like that, there's a bit of a sharp edge there and it's a bit short. Whereas this has got a little bit of a chin and just feels good in the hand. It like rests in your hands nicely. And obviously the bigger you get, the more ergonomic you get. And then you end up with this beast, which is really comfy to hold, but it's just ridiculous when it comes to pocketability. So I think in terms of ergonomics, I think between all those devices, 35XX doesn't have joysticks, which some people really want for PlayStation 1 and those kind of things. So I think we are, with this device, we've got more power than the RGB20S. We've got more power in this device. It's a little bit bigger, but I think we've just got the happy medium here. It's price versus performance versus size. I really think this device is the nexus of all those things. And then my overall build quality rating, I'd give it a 4.5, maybe a 4 out of 5 because of the rattle, but in terms of the build quality, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a decently built device. Now, I used to do an audio test, and I just don't feel like it really relays well on YouTube anyway. And so I've kind of relegated to just saying, it has front-facing speakers. Yes. It doesn't have front-facing speakers. No. Because on these devices, on any device, if the speakers aren't facing upward towards your face, what the is the point? Yeah, I went on a bit about this on my previous video, and it's just because, with the RG405V, they had all this real estate, a massive device, like a comically big device, and the speakers are here. Like, what were they thinking? Whereas this device, that's why I say something got lost between the old guard of Anbernic and all the devices and the new stuff. It's like they're getting too fancy and they're forgetting things, or something's getting lost in translation because, so I've got a mic here on my chest. So if I hold it here, and that way, to one of the best games of all time, except for other games. You play Sega games for that Sega at the beginning. So that's there. Okay, let me restart. It's one of the reasons why I like the Pocketability X28. It's a big device with some issues, but it's got front-facing speakers. So if I play a game and just put it up one notch, I can have a little bit of audio if I don't have headphones. Also, it's rude, like sitting in front of the TV with my wife, and then I put a headphone in so that I can hear the audio. So front-facing speakers just mean a lot to me as a human being on planet Earth. I want to say a little bit about ergonomics. So, you've got the RG35X here on the left, and then you've got the RG353VS on the right. The fact that they are vertical devices hampers your experience on higher end systems. So the RG405V, that big chunky one, makes it more usable for higher end systems because it is so large. But I don't feel like you're getting much more. You've got a bit more of a shoulder, a bit more of a thicker body here. But actually, it's not a thicker body. You're not getting much more in terms of ergonomics to handle higher end systems, even though it gives you more power. And so the ergonomics actually hamper your experience of the higher end chip in this device. And so it's just a little bit like a quick little service announcement to say, if you are considering the Anbernic RG35XX, maybe go for that. If you're happy with PS1 being your limits of systems you can play. You can play a bit of PSP on here, a bit of Dreamcast on here, a bit of N64 on here. You can't really do that on here unless you really kind of look around and try and use custom firmwares. But just to say, you're not losing much by going with your RG35XX in terms of ergonomics versus performance. And then this is the see-through black, and I'm not sure what the plastic is like on the other devices, but just aesthetically, this black is really nice and smooth, like a smooth texture. So it's a matte plastic, which really feels nice in the hand, and it really does look quite nice with the see-through black. So if you like the way it looks here in the studio, I'm going to try color grade it as close to real life as possible. And then finally, just connectivity. You do have HDMI output here. You've got your headphone jack. This does not have Bluetooth speakers. On the go for, external controllers and that sort of thing. Your charging is at the bottom. It's got a volume rocker on the side, so notch rocking over there. You've got your power button there and a reset button here, which is quite handy on these Linux devices. Your TF2, your second ROMs card, and your firmware goes on there. And then, so firmware choices, this comes shipped with a version of Emulation Station. And then the two custom firmwares that I looked into were ArcOS and JelOS. So JelOS, which this is, has a menu system. So if you go into, let's say, PSP, you go in here, a lot of the controls for the emulator are controlled here. You can set your frame skipping, you can choose your graphics back end, internal resolution. So you can do a lot of the settings, show FPS here within the menu, whereas ArcOS kind of more leaves it to you to do it within each emulator. There's pros and cons to each, but I really like this sort of unified experience. And that's the main difference. ArcOS gets updated less regularly. This gets updated. You get over-the-air updates if you go into System and you go to System Settings and you go down here. You can go and you can start your update there. And they keep it up to date quite often, and JelOS actually release a version that you can install from their websites on here, which they don't do for all devices. And then in terms of performance, this thing is well documented. You are going to play all your systems, like your 16-bit systems and that, which is your Super Nintendo, your Genesis, your Sega Genesis. You're going to get PlayStation 1 playing perfectly on here. You're going to get a bit of Dreamcast. You're going to get a bit of PSP, like a fair amount of PSP, and you will get some N64. A device that's been around for a while, so I'm not going to do a lot of testing here. The community has done so much for us already in that regard. So let's make the device better. Let's switch it off and let's remove the screws. It is a T6. All right, and then I happen to have one of these guitar pick thingies, which helps you just open these electronic devices up. Usually, if you work the corners and work your way through, you get into them. Okay, so have a look at. All right, so the antenna is also connected there, but let's see if I can just do it like that. So you just open it like the Holy Bible. The clips, the little pieces that clip in, for your reference, are here. So you want to pull this part of the body out. So when you're using the plectrum, to grip it and pull this out, so you create a bit of space so that these clips can come out and not break. Because I did find when I opened my RG505 the other day, I didn't know which way to pull, and the clips broke, which they shouldn't really. It's not really good that they do that. What we are going to do, I'm just going to get my scissors. I'm going to cut a strip to go along here. I'm just going to cut a piece to go over there, and then do it neatly. Last time I did it with my RG35XX, I did it pretty rough and ready, and that just didn't look nice, so I'm going to do it a bit better this time. All right, so I'm going to cut neat pieces of this tape. So all we're doing is we're creating a sticky space to hold this so that when you shake it, it doesn't rattle. That's all. Put that there. And then I'm going to kind of snug it around. So what I'm going to do is there. Get it stuck on nicely there on top of that. See how that piece looks? That piece looks a bit better. But with a see-through device, just word to the wise, you are going to get it showing. All right, and while we're in here, just a little bit of a teardown look. They've put a bit of heat dissipation on the CPU, which is great. There's your rumble motor there. Your battery is just above the CPU, which is not great. You know, batteries do heat up, but there is that heat dissipation tape, so that does help a little bit. But yeah, pretty neatly put together. There's no, soft buffering for your buttons, and that's why all the buttons are so clicky. Okay, so electrical tape is in. Let's close this up. Nice that we could just kind of do this without having to pull wires off and that sort of thing. Now I'm just going to make sure that on here there aren't any cables. I don't want to jam cables in clips and things like that. Everything looks good, so I'm just going to flip it closed. All right, let's just put all these screws in here. All right, so let's test that. Much better. So it doesn't sound like a box of matches anymore. So that's step one in making it better. And then I'll link you to a website, Sakura Retro Modding. You could make this look like a Game Boy, especially if you have the gray one. You could really make it look cool with some stickers and all sorts of things, or kind of go the PlayStation route and make this your dedicated PlayStation 1 device, whatever you want to do. There are some cool modding things out there for you. So the JelOS setup, I would recommend a 16 gig. I had a 32 gig card for the operating system and a 64 gig minimum for your games. You can get by with a 64 gig and install the OS on here and the games on there. How you would do this is I've got a link to the GitHub page. You go and download the latest release for the RG353V or VS. There's a bunch of them on the same release. You will unzip it with 7-zip. I'll put the link to 7-zip if you need it. Simply flash the image using Berliner Etcher. So flash that image to your 16 or 32 gigabyte card using Berliner Etcher. It's very simple. You choose the image, you choose the SD card. Make sure you do not flash your hard drive or something crazy like that, and then flash it to the SD card. Then you place the SD card into the TF slots and you start up the device. Now obviously this is already been set up. You put it into the TF1 and you let it start. It'll take a while to start up. It'll do a bunch of things and get things going. Once that's up and running, you press start, you quit, you shut down, say yes, light is off, put your SD card in. This SD card was formatted to exFAT. So if it's a brand new card, it'll be formatted to exFAT. If it's not, maybe just make sure it's formatted to exFAT and then put it into the TF2. And then you start it up again. What that will do is it'll populate your second SD card with all the folders necessary. Now, once that is done, you will shut the device down again and you will load your games and you will also load your BIOS files. Now, it's important at this point to mention that you must not flash the cards that came with the device, because what you can do is get the BIOS files from the cards that Anbernic sent you and just copy them over. And then you should be fine. Usually the BIOS files are either in the game folder or there'll be a folder called BIOS and they'll go in there. So just check it out. The TF1 card, the firmware card, won't be readable on your computer. So don't bother with that. Just put your BIOS and everything onto the second SD card. And then you can set it up. You know, you can go in here, you can go into network settings and you can sign into your Wi-Fi. You go into game settings and you can actually go to the bottom here and sign into retro achievements. Haven't done that yet, but you can do that. You can go and create your Retro Achievements account and sign in there. And then little things to know, you know, if you go in and you go into a game, one of the big shortcuts to remember is that start and select twice is quit a game. And then another important one, if you are in a game and you want to change settings and stuff, select an X will take you into the RetroArch menu. RetroArch is a whole nother thing for a whole nother day. I feel like I need to make a RetroArch video because I need a reference for myself. And then if you want to put the device to sleep, you just press the power button. I don't think the sleep on this device is fantastic, but it does have a sleep function. And to turn the device off, you need to be in this main menu. If you're in here, it doesn't work with select, opens up the in-game menu. But if you're here in the main menu, press select and you scroll down and you say shut system down. So another thing that I want to explain to you, one of the things that I would do to make this special for a friend is to load Pico 8 on. And this is another reason why I decided to load JelOS on, because with JelOS, it's quite easy to load the full Pico 8 system onto it. Pico 8 is just something that I've been getting into, and I was excited to try it out on this device specifically because it's a vertical device. I know the RGB30 is ideal for it, but this is the sort of device I would recommend to a friend. I'm not sure I would recommend the RGB30 for various reasons. I just feel like this is built nice, better, and so even though the Pico 8 is a square system, anyway, long story, I think this device is great for it. And so we go in here. What you do is you need to go to the Pico 8 website. I'll link that below as well. And you need to buy it for $15. So, you know, fair amount of money, but this is, you can just use it on all your devices. And when you see it, you'll realize why it's so cool. So once you get your Raspberry Pi version, you unzip that folder. And then the Pico 8 folder that's inside there, you take the contents of that folder, so don't drag the folder over, drag the contents of that folder into the Pico 8 folder of the second SD card for your JelOS device, and it just works. So if you go in here, that's exactly what I've done. I've dragged that contents over. So it needs to be paid, because otherwise it's not going to work. They're not going to register that you're a paid user of the device. So here we go, start Pico 8. Oh, and you need to be signed into the Wi-Fi. So you need to be signed into the Wi-Fi for this. Now, what Pico 8 is, it's like an indie game app store with, if you go here are a bunch of the latest games that have just been made, and some of them are just curiosities. Some of them are just animations of things happening on a screen, and if you press a button, something weird happens. So it's a nice little thing to do when watching TV or whatever, and you just want to see what developers have come up with, and you can actually develop your own games on the device itself, which is quite fun. Anyway, so you've got your new, you've got your featured. Featured is cool because these are games that, Happy Larry and the Vampire Bat. I definitely got to try that one. The featured are games that people think are worth trying out because, you know, there's a lot of weird stuff on here, like junk on here. Anyway, this is a game that I've been enjoying. And with your Wi-Fi connected, you just go in, download the game, and play it. And so it's once you've paid that $15, everything's free from there on. So as you can see, it is square, and you know, if you look up the RGB30, you'll know why I say that it is more ideally suited for Pico 8s. But when I realized that Pico 8 works so well on JelOS, I suddenly realized this is an interesting thing to do for my RG353VS review, because I feel like this device is built better than the RGB30, and I feel like a lot of people love the nostalgia of a vertical Game Boy, and this gives you all of those feels. Anyway, check out this cool game. I mean, just fantastic. Like, you know, people are making these for free and developing games that are arguably even better than maybe on the Game Boy Color. You know, it's just really nice. So now what we need is a cheap vertical square screen device from the company that makes quality devices. Retroid, I think this is the perfect device for you. Honestly, I hope Retroid are watching this, because a square screen vertical device with a little bit of power but affordable, like $60, I think the thing will just sell like crazy. You know, Celeste was developed, the original Celeste was developed on Pico 8, so it's one of the success stories of Pico 8. And you can see I'm getting excited about this. This is just so super cool in a very nerdy way. People who discover this, you know, if I give this to a friend, they'll be like, wow, this is super cool, you know, just like a curiosity. The only way I figured out how to get out of it is to press the reset button. So if anyone knows how to get out of Pico 8, please let me know. All right, so let's look at affordability, cost versus performance versus value. This is my favorite part of the video. Now, the RGB20S is $89 on Lit NXT. The RGB30 is $95. The Miu Mini Plus is $80 on Lit NXT, and the RG35XX is $69 on Lit NXT. The RG353VS is the most expensive at $110. So this is interesting because you can do everything that I just said on here on the RGB30 for less money, and it's got a lot going for it. The only thing, if quality is something that's important to you, I do think that you should go for the RG353VS or the RG35XX. These probably are the two better quality of the lot. The Miu Mini Plus is just a lovely device, very nostalgic, all the retro feels, and a really good Dpad, very nostalgic retro Dpad. And so in terms of which is the most retro device in this like lot, I'd probably go for the Miu Mini Plus, but you can't do the Pico 8 stuff on here. Well, I think you can, but I haven't looked into it. So there's that. It's actually, this is the first time I've reached this point in the video, and I'm thinking to myself, what can I advise you? Because this is a tricky situation. We're actually spoiled for choice. Okay, I think the RGB20S is out. I just, you know, I know we've been sent those devices from these third-party resellers. They've got a lot of stock and they want to sell them, but I just don't think the RGB20S is worth it at $89 compared to these. If you were going to go for the RGB20S, I would just get the Anbernic RG35XX. You get less performance, but it's just I don't know, better device. You can argue with me in the comments on that one. Okay, let's whittle it down. We've got $69 for the 35XX. We've got $95 for the RGB30. We've got $80 for the Mini Plus and $110 for this. Okay, let's have a look. This is definitely still in the running. I think in terms of price and all of those things, I think we need to get rid of that because I would rather go for the RG35XX in terms of price and all that stuff. I know a lot of people like the Mini Plus, but I think for this exercise, we're going to whittle it down to that. For the money, it depends. So I think this is where we ended up. For the money, it depends what you want to go for. If you really want a vertical device with a bit of power and is very well made, I think the RG353VS is the device for you. But if the price is kind of really bugging you, I think you should go for one of these. You're going to get a lot more for your money with this thing. It has the same processor, but the screen is so nice. Such a lovely screen. And then obviously horizontal. So if you don't want a horizontal device, this isn't for you. But this, I'm going to make a video about this, and it's going to be a split personality review. Because on the one hand, the quality of it really concerns me. PowerKitty's quality is sketchy. I know TechDweeb's HDMI port just didn't work. And so there are issues with PowerKitty, but this really is just an exceptional device. So if you had to choose, I would say out of this lot, this is my favorite. This is the one that I would recommend to a friend, and this is the one that I'd go for if I was on an absolute budget.